The earth was broken. Cities once full of life now stood in silence. Skyscrapers leaned like tired giants. Cars rusted in empty streets. The sky was gray, filled with smoke and dust. Humanity had lost. The alien armies came from the stars with fire and power. Their weapons were too strong. Their machines were too fast. In just a few months, Earth's great nations fell. The armies of humans were crushed. The governments vanished. The people who survived hid like shadows, living in fear. The aliens, called the Varnuk, were proud of their victory. They walked the streets like kings. Their generals laughed. Humans are weak, they said. They are nothing but insects under our boots. And yet, whispers filled the ruins. Whispers of a man. A ghost. A shadow that moved through the broken cities. No one knew his name. No one knew where he came from. Some said he was a soldier left behind. Others said he was a demon born from Earth's anger. But all agreed on one thing. Where he walked, Varnuk soldiers died. At first, the Varnuk generals ignored the rumors. One man could not be a threat to their great armies. But then their patrols started to disappear. Small teams at first, then larger groups. Sometimes they found the bodies, cold, lifeless, with strange black feathers placed on their chests. Fear began to grow in the hearts of the Varnuk. Not even their strongest weapons could catch him. Not even their fastest hunters could find him. It was like chasing a shadow through a nightmare. In a ruined part of old New York, a Varnuk captain stood with his soldiers. He barked orders in a harsh alien tongue. Find him. Burn the ruins. Search every building. But the humans watching from the shadows knew it was useless. He was already there. Watching. Waiting. High above them, in the skeleton of a broken skyscraper, he stood. A man dressed in dark armor, worn and dirty. His face was hidden behind a cracked helmet. A long black coat fluttered behind him like wings. And in his gloved hands, he held a weapon made from old Earth tech. Silent, deadly, precise. His name was forgotten even to himself. He had only one name now. A name whispered by the few surviving humans. A name that would become a nightmare to the Varnuk. Raven. He moved without sound, like a shadow sliding across stone. His eyes, cold and sharp, locked onto the enemy below. He was not here for revenge. He was not here for glory. He was here for something much simpler. Survival. Hope. A message. Earth was not finished yet. Down below, the Varnuk soldiers moved carefully through the ruins, their weapons raised, their scanners blinking nervously. They spoke to each other in short, tense voices. They were afraid. They felt the wrongness in the air. And then, a soft sound, a feather floating down from the sky. One of the soldiers looked up. A flash of movement. A shot. And he fell. Panic spread like fire. Where is he? Find him. Another soldier disappeared into the smoke. Then another. Silent, swift, final. Raven moved through the broken building like a wraith. Every step planned. Every move perfect. He used the ruins as his weapon, striking from shadows, vanishing before the enemy could even turn. Minutes passed. The Varnuk captain, breathing hard, stood alone now, his soldiers lying silent around him. He fired wildly into the dark, screaming in rage. "You are nothing," he shouted. "You are weak. Come and fight me." Silence answered him. Then, from the dark, a voice. Soft. Cold. "You first." Before the captain could turn, darkness swallowed him. Later, when the Varnuk generals reviewed the scene, they found only empty streets and a message scratched into the wall. A single word. Raven. The generals grew silent. They realized too late. Earth still had warriors. Earth still had ghosts. And one of them had taken flight. The night was heavy over the ruins of New York. Smoke drifted through the broken streets. The moon, half hidden behind clouds, cast a pale, sick light. In the middle of the dead city, a Varnock patrol moved carefully. 10 alien soldiers in full battle armor. Each one carried scanners, rifles, and fear inside their hearts. They had heard the stories, the whispers of something moving in the dark, of a man who left no survivors, of the shadow they called Raven. The Varnock General Craven had ordered them to find him. "Bring me his body," he had said, "or do not return at all." The soldiers knew what failure meant, so they walked slowly, nervously. Their scanners beeped, searching for life signs. But the scanners found nothing. The streets were silent, the buildings empty. No birds, no dogs, no life at all. Only the ruins. And something else, something watching them. A soldier named Freck paused at a corner. His hand shook slightly. He lifted his scanner again. Still nothing. Then, a whisper in the wind. "Raven." He turned sharply. Nothing there. Another soldier laughed nervously. "Just wind," he said. But deep inside, he knew it was not the wind. He knew they were being hunted. A feather floated down in front of Freck's face. Black as night. Soft as death. Freck's mouth opened to shout. A sharp sound cracked through the air. A silent flash. He dropped to the ground, lifeless. The patrol froze. Weapons raised. Eyes wide. "Contact," one of them screamed. But there was no enemy in sight. Only shadows. The leader of the patrol, Captain Norek, barked orders. "Form a circle. Watch the roofs." They formed a tight group, backs to each other, rifles pointed outward. Their helmets scanned every movement, every sound. But the enemy was not standing in front of them. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere. From above, from the dark windows, Raven watched. He moved like a ghost between broken walls. Silent, deadly. He had learned patience from the old world. He had learned the art of fear. Another feather floated down. Another soldier looked up, too slow. A second sharp shot. Another body hit the ground. Panic broke their circle. The Varnock shouted and fired wildly into the darkness. Bright flashes lit the ruins. Bullets tore into empty air and broken concrete. Raven was already gone. He moved fast, shifting between cover, always in the shadows. Captain Norek tried to regroup his soldiers. But fear is a stronger weapon than any gun. They started running. Running into the ruins. Running into the dark. One by one, Raven picked them off. No mercy. No hesitation. No sound except the soft fall of feathers and bodies. Within minutes, only Norek was left. He stumbled through the ruins, breathing hard, his rifle shaking in his hands. He reached an old library, its doors broken and hanging loose. He rushed inside, slamming his back against the wall. Silence. His heart pounded in his ears. "I am a captain of the Varnock Empire," he said aloud, trying to be brave. "I fear nothing." But even he knew it was a lie. A soft sound above him. Norek looked up. Two cold eyes stared back. Raven dropped from the ceiling like death itself. Norek tried to lift his weapon, but it was too late. A quick, sharp strike to the head. Darkness took him. Hours later, Varnock drones found the patrol's last location. They searched the ruins carefully. They found the bodies. They found the feathers. And on the wall inside the broken library, written in red dust, they found a single word: Raven. General Craven watched the drone footage from his command center. His fists clenched in anger. His officers stood silent around him. "This is one man," Craven roared. "One human." But none of his officers answered. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. Raven was not just a man. He was a message. Earth was not finished. Earth still had warriors. And soon, the whole galaxy would know his name. The galaxy was watching. The fall of Earth was supposed to be fast and simple. The Varnock Empire had promised a quick victory, but now strange reports were coming from the ruins of the human world. Reports of a shadow. Reports of a name. One word, whispered like a curse. Raven. Across the stars, news spread faster than any ship. Pirates, traders, mercenaries, all spoke of the human ghost. Some laughed. Others grew silent. On the Varnock homeworld, General Craven sat before a large screen. In front of him, a galaxy-wide broadcast was starting. It was a show of power, a warning to any who dared challenge the Empire. The Varnock High Lord appeared on the screen, dressed in heavy armor. He smiled coldly and spoke to the camera. "Earth is broken," he said. "Humans are finished. Their last fighters crawl in the dirt. Soon, they will be erased." The generals and soldiers watching around the galaxy cheered. The Varnock had crushed many worlds before. Earth was just another trophy. Or so they thought. As the High Lord continued to speak, the screen flickered. A static noise buzzed loudly. The image twisted. The High Lord's face froze, then disappeared. Confused murmurs filled the halls. The transmission turned black. Then something appeared. Something simple. Something terrifying. A black feather, floating slowly across the screen. And a single word painted in blood-red letters. Raven. For a moment, the entire galaxy fell silent. No speeches. No orders. No laughter. Just a cold fear crawling up the spines of every soldier and general watching. The broadcast ended suddenly. The screen went dark. General Craven slammed his fist on the table. "Who allowed this?" he shouted. "Find the hacker. Find this human." But deep down, even Craven felt it. This was not just a simple hacker attack. It was a message. Raven had reached beyond Earth. He had touched the stars with his fear. Back on Earth, in the ruins of New York, Raven stood in an abandoned broadcast station. The old machines smoked and sparked around him. He watched the black screens quietly, his face hidden in the shadows. He had sent his message. He had made the Varnock look weak. That was enough for now. He picked up his old rifle, slung it over his shoulder, and disappeared into the smoke. Meanwhile, in the Varnock command centers across Earth, panic grew. Soldiers refused to patrol at night. Scanners picked up strange signals, faint, soft, like whispers. Every black feather found sent waves of terror through the ranks. Some commanders demanded to leave Earth. Others begged for more reinforcements. General Craven made a brutal decision. He gathered his top officers. "There is no Raven," he said coldly. "There is only fear. Fear makes weak soldiers." He ordered squads of Varnock elites, heavy armor, better weapons, to sweep the ruins. "Find him," Craven said. "Burn the cities if you must, but bring me his head." The Varnock forces moved out like an iron fist. They destroyed buildings, crushed hiding humans, set traps. But Raven was not hiding. He was hunting. In the broken heart of New York, an elite squad marched through the ruins. Their armor gleamed under the broken sun. Their leader, Commander Jern, was known for his cruelty. He laughed at the idea of one human being a threat. "Let him come," he told his men. "I will show him Varnock's strength." They reached a ruined park, where trees stood like skeletons. The ground was cracked and dry. Commander Jern stood in the center of the clearing. "Come out, human," he shouted. "Face real warriors." Silence answered him. Then a soft sound. A feather, black as night, floated down and landed on his helmet. Jern laughed. He raised his weapon. A shot cracked through the air. Jern's head snapped back. He dropped without a sound. Panic exploded through the squad. Shots fired wildly into the ruins. Screams echoed. One by one, they fell. Feathers rained down like a silent storm. Later that night, Craven received the report. Another elite squad gone. No survivors. No bodies taken. Only feathers left behind. The general stared at the report for a long time. The words blurred in his vision. Raven. The name was now a poison inside the Varnock army. A ghost they could not kill. A story they could not erase. And somewhere in the ruins, the real Raven smiled coldly. The hunt had just begun. General Craven had enough. The name Raven was burning through his army like a disease. His soldiers feared the night. His commanders whispered of curses and ghosts. The Empire's greatest war machine was slowing down because of one man. "This ends now," Craven said coldly. He gathered his top minds, the best hunters, the smartest planners. Together, they built a trap. Not just any trap, a perfect one. They chose an old human hospital, standing lonely in the ruins. Its broken windows looked like empty eyes. Its halls were cold and filled with dust. Craven ordered his forces to fake weakness, to send out false patrols, to pretend to be afraid. And inside the hospital, they set up everything. Snipers hidden behind walls, bombs under the floors, sensors on every door. The hospital would become a cage. At the center, they placed bait, a group of captured human survivors. Men, women, and even children. They tied them up, made them scream, made them call for help. "We know the human loves his own kind," Craven said. "He will come for them." The soldiers waited. Hours passed. The sun fell. Night came, and with it came the fear. Every shadow made them jump. Every creak of metal made their fingers tighten on the trigger. But no Raven. Not yet. High above the city, on the top of a broken tower, Raven watched through old binoculars. He saw the hospital. He saw the lights. He saw the movements. He knew it was a trap. It was too loud, too open, too easy. Still, he saw the humans inside. He saw a child crying against the wall. Raven closed his eyes for a moment. The Varnock thought he would walk into their trap like a fool. They had forgotten something important. He was not just a man. He was a ghost. Inside the hospital, Captain Frake, leader of the ambush team, tapped his foot impatiently. "He will come," Craven had promised. "He cannot resist." But Captain Frake felt uneasy. Something was wrong. The soldiers around him were tense. Sweat dripped inside their helmets. Then the lights flickered. A small thing. Just a flicker. But enough. Frake turned sharply. "Stay alert," he barked. The soldiers tightened their grip. Somewhere far down the hall, a door creaked open. All guns pointed at the darkness. "Show yourself," Frake shouted. Silence. Then a black feather floated into the room. Panic broke loose. "Fire!" Frake screamed. The hallway exploded in bullets and energy blasts. The walls shattered. Dust filled the air. When the shooting stopped, the hallway was empty. No Raven. Only shadows. Suddenly, the sensors started to blink wildly. Movements. Everywhere. Upstairs. Downstairs. Behind the walls. Confusion spread. "He's everywhere," a soldier shouted. "Impossible." Frake growled. "There is only one human." But it didn't matter. The soldiers fired blindly into the shadows. The bombs planted under the floors began to explode. Not because of Raven, but because the soldiers themselves triggered them. Chaos. Screams. Smoke. Fire. In the confusion, Raven slipped inside. He moved like a ghost through the broken walls. Silent. Swift. He found the humans tied up. He cut their bonds quickly, whispering to them. "Run. Hide. Follow the dark paths." The humans nodded, fear and hope in their eyes. They slipped away into the ruins while Raven stayed behind, waiting, watching. Captain Frake tried to regroup his men, but it was too late. They died one by one, quick and silent. Snipers shot their own teammates in the smoke, thinking they were Raven. Traps meant for the human caught the Varnock soldiers instead. The hospital, once their perfect trap, had become a graveyard. On a rooftop across the street, General Craven watched through his high-powered scope. He saw his best soldiers fall. He saw the humans escape. He saw the shadow moving through the fire. Kraven's mouth twisted into a snarl. "This is no warrior," he spat. "This is a demon." His officers stood silent. They had no answers, only fear. And far below, as the hospital burned, Raven stood in the smoke. He raised a black feather high above his head, a symbol, a warning. Then he disappeared into the night. The next morning, across the Empire's networks, a new message appeared, a simple picture of the burning hospital. And one word, Raven. The name that once made generals laugh now made them shiver. And somewhere, in the endless ruins of Earth, the real ghost prepared for his next move. Because the war was not over. It had only just begun. The fire from the destroyed hospital still burned in the distance. But Raven was already moving, silent as a shadow. His mission was far from over. He had seen something during the chaos of the hospital, the fear in the eyes of the human captives. They were scared, but they weren't broken. They were not just survivors. They were fighters. Raven didn't need to wait for them to thank him. He knew what needed to be done. The war against the Varnock was only beginning. Meanwhile, the Varnock Empire was falling apart. General Kraven paced back and forth in his command center. His eyes were burning with anger. "Every human on Earth will be exterminated," he shouted. He had been humiliated. His soldiers had failed him. His empire was losing control. "Send every unit, every elite squad. We find Raven. We find him and crush him." But even as he gave his orders, he knew that something had shifted. The human had become more than a ghost. He had become a symbol, and that symbol was starting to grow. Across Earth, whispers began. First, it was small. A group of rebels here, a few human fighters there. But soon, the whispers turned into something more. A movement, a rebellion. The humans began to fight back. It wasn't just Raven. It was the hope he had sparked, the fearlessness he had shown. Raven's name spread like fire. It reached the deepest corners of Earth, where the Varnock had thought no one would survive. A small group of human soldiers, once hiding in the shadows, now took the fight to the streets. They attacked Varnock patrols. They sabotaged supply lines. They destroyed weapons. And each victory was marked with one word, Raven. In the heart of the human resistance, a man named Captain Lucas stood with his soldiers. He had been a farmer before the war, but Raven's actions had made him a leader. He looked at the map in front of him. "We have to keep pushing," he said, his voice steady. "We can't let the Varnock regroup." One of his soldiers, a young woman named Marla, nodded. "We've been moving faster. They don't know what hit them." Captain Lucas smiled, though the smile didn't reach his eyes. "No, they don't. And it's because of him. Raven." Marla glanced out the window. "We still don't know who he is, just that he's the reason we're still alive." "That's the point," Lucas said. "He's more than a person. He's hope. He's our strength." They all turned to the old radio on the table. It crackled to life. "Raven is out there," the voice said. "It's time to fight." The broadcast was short, but its impact was clear. The rebellion had begun. Back in the Varnock Command Center, General Kraven's rage had reached its breaking point. He received reports of human attacks everywhere. Everywhere. "What is this?" he shouted, slamming his fist onto the console. "It's the humans," one of his officers said. "They're using Raven's name. They've become organized." Kraven's eyes narrowed. "The rebels are nothing," he growled. "But this changes things." Kraven turned toward the massive map of Earth on the wall. He tapped a red spot on the screen. "That's where they're gathering. We'll strike them there." He turned to his officer. "Gather the fleet. We'll wipe them out. Every last one." The officer hesitated. "But General, Raven will be there." Kraven's eyes darkened. "Raven is nothing but a human. He bleeds like the rest of them. But Craven knew this was different. Raven had brought something with him, something that even the mighty Varnock Empire hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. Real fear. And the rebellion had only just begun. In the heart of the human resistance, Raven watched from the shadows. He had been listening, learning, waiting. He knew what was coming. The Varnock would come, and they would come with everything they had. But Raven was not afraid. He had spent too many years in the dark to fear the light. As the humans began to prepare for the coming storm, Raven walked into their camp. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The sight of him was enough. Captain Lucas approached, his face filled with disbelief. "You came," he said quietly. "After everything, you came." Raven nodded. "There's work to do." Lucas's eyes filled with respect. "The Varnock won't stop, but we have you now. We have a chance." Raven's expression remained cold. "We don't need a chance. We need to fight." And just like that, the rebellion was no longer just a whisper. It was a force. The air was thick with tension. Raven stood on the edge of the cliff, overlooking the battlefield. Below him, the last human resistance gathered. They were not many, only a few hundred, but their resolve was stronger than any army. Raven had seen battles before, but this one would be different. The Varnock were coming, and they would come with everything they had. The humans had one advantage: Raven. But even he knew this was no longer just a battle. It was the last stand. Back at the resistance camp, Captain Lucas stood in front of his soldiers. "We've fought this war for too long to give up now," he said, his voice steady but full of fire. "They think we're weak. They think we're broken, but they are wrong." The soldiers stood in silence, their faces grim but determined. Lucas nodded toward Raven, who had walked into the camp without a word. "This man, this ghost, has led us to this moment. We owe him everything." Raven stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "We don't owe anyone anything," he said quietly. "We fight to survive. We fight because we must." Lucas's eyes flashed with understanding. "Then let's make sure they know we are not easy prey." Raven's gaze lingered on the horizon. The sky was darkening. The storm was coming. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battlefield, General Craven prepared for the final strike. He stood before his commanders, his anger boiling beneath his calm exterior. "Today, we finish this," he growled. "We will crush them. No survivors." The Varnock army, hundreds of thousands strong, lined up in perfect formation. Their weapons glinted under the dying light of the sun. They were ready, and they were certain they would win. Craven's eyes scanned the battlefield. His mind calculated every move, every possible outcome. But deep down, he knew the truth. This would not be as easy as he thought. The name Raven still haunted him, even as the battle horns blared. The first explosions shook the ground as the Varnock advanced. Raven had already prepared his traps. The battlefield was a maze of hidden dangers. Every step the Varnock took was met with explosions, hidden mines, and snipers picking them off one by one. But the Varnock were relentless. They pushed forward, their armor making them nearly invincible. But they were not prepared for the guerrilla tactics the humans had learned from Raven. Lucas led his soldiers into the fray, charging with everything they had. Raven was behind them, moving silently through the chaos, a shadow in the storm. The humans were not soldiers by nature. They were farmers, doctors, teachers. But Raven had made them warriors. He had shown them that survival was worth the fight. And they fought. General Craven's frustration grew with every passing minute. His forces had been slowed, but they hadn't broken. He ordered a full charge, his elite soldiers storming the front lines. But as they advanced, something unexpected happened. A single figure stepped forward from the smoke. Raven. He stood alone, his black feathers billowing in the wind. The Varnock froze for a moment, unsure of what they were seeing. Was this the ghost they had been hearing about? Was this the man who had torn through their ranks? Craven's eyes narrowed. "This ends now," he whispered. He raised his weapon, aimed at Raven, and fired. But Raven was faster. He dove to the side, disappearing into the smoke. The Varnock soldiers fired blindly, but Raven was already gone, moving like a ghost through the battlefield. It was then that Craven realized the truth. Raven wasn't just one man. He was the spirit of the resistance. He was the fear that had shattered their confidence. Craven roared with rage and ordered his forces to follow. They charged into the smoke, desperate to find the one they feared. Raven moved through the battlefield with deadly precision. Each step was calculated. Each move was a trap for the Varnock. He had no intention of fighting them directly. He was never meant to fight in the open. He was a ghost, and ghosts don't fight. They vanish. And that's exactly what he did. He vanished, but the battle wasn't over. The Varnock were closing in. The humans were growing tired. Lucas fought on, his rifle raised high. But even he knew that if they didn't end this soon, they would be overrun. Then, through the smoke, he saw Raven once again. This time, he was not alone. The humans had rallied. The survivors had joined the fight. The rebellion had become a true army. Raven stood at the front, leading them. With a single roar, the human forces charged forward, their weapons raised high. The Varnock tried to hold their ground, but they were no match for the fury of the humans. It was then that General Craven saw the truth. This wasn't a war anymore. It was a massacre. The Varnock had underestimated the humans. They had underestimated Raven. As the sun began to set, the battlefield was littered with the fallen, both human and Varnock alike. The resistance had won. Against all odds, against all expectation, the humans had won. Raven stood at the edge of the battlefield, his eyes scanning the wreckage. The fight was over. For now. He turned and walked away, the shadows swallowing him whole. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. The humans had won the final fight. The Varnock were broken, their forces scattered across Earth. But Raven knew better than to celebrate. The real work was just beginning. Captain Lucas stood in the center of the battlefield, looking at the wreckage around him. The ground was littered with bodies, some human, many Varnock. The resistance had fought with everything they had, and it showed. They had won, but at what cost? He walked through the smoke, his steps slow. He stopped next to a fallen soldier, a young man who had joined the fight because of Raven. Lucas closed his eyes for a moment. It wasn't just the Varnock they had to fight. It was the fear, the loss, the pain of everything they had lost in this war. Raven, Lucas whispered to himself. Where did he go? No one knew. No one had seen him after the battle. Far from the battlefield, deep in the shadows, Raven sat alone. He didn't need to be seen. He didn't need the thanks. He was a soldier, a ghost, and his work was never finished. He had given the humans hope, but it was not enough. There was still more to be done. The Varnock were not completely defeated. They would regroup. They would return. And when they did, the humans would need more than hope. They would need strength. They would need unity. But Raven knew that wasn't something that could be built overnight. Back at the human camp, Lucas gathered the remaining leaders of the resistance. They were standing around a large table, their faces grim but determined. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. We've lost many, Lucas said, his voice steady. But we've gained something far more important. He looked at the faces of the men and women around him. We've gained our freedom. But at what price? A voice called out from the back. It was Marla, the young woman who had fought bravely by Lucas's side. The Varnock are still out there. And Raven. She paused, unsure of what to say next. Lucas's eyes softened. Raven is a force of nature. He doesn't need to be here. His work is done. Our work begins now. But how do we rebuild? Another leader asked. The Varnock may have retreated, but their scars remain. We need a plan. We need hope. Lucas nodded. The first step is to unite every human survivor. To rebuild what the Varnock have destroyed, we'll need to restore Earth, piece by piece. And after that, Marla asked. After that, we build an army. We fight back. We make sure the Varnock never return. Far away, on the Varnock flagship, General Craven watched from his command chair, his hands clenched in anger. The defeat was a bitter pill to swallow. The Varnock Empire had never suffered such a loss. But Craven was not a fool. He knew the war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. We underestimated them, he muttered, staring at the screen that showed the smoldering remains of Earth. But we will not make the same mistake again. He turned to his officers. Prepare the fleet. The humans may have won this battle, but they have not won the war. We will return. And when we do, we will crush them. Back on Earth, Raven watched the sky. He had no home, no people, but he had a purpose. And that was enough. The humans had won, but there was still more to be done. They needed time to heal, to rebuild, and Raven would be there when they were ready. He moved silently through the ruins, a lone figure in the night. He would never stop, because the fight was never truly over. And if the Varnock returned, Raven would be there to fight them. He would always be there. Captain Lucas looked out at the horizon, the sun beginning to rise over the broken world. The war had changed everything. But in that moment, he felt something new, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Raven, Lucas whispered. He may be gone for now, but he's never really gone. He's always watching. And so are we. The first rays of sunlight broke through the dark clouds, casting a soft glow on the ruined landscape. Earth was broken, but it was not defeated. Raven stood on a hill, watching the world begin to heal. The battle had been won. The Varnock had retreated, but Raven knew that this was just the beginning of something greater. The humans had proven themselves, but the true challenge was yet to come. Back at the human base, Captain Lucas stood before a crowd of survivors. Their faces were tired, but they were alive. The fire of hope burned brightly in their eyes. We've lost much, Lucas began, his voice strong and steady. But we've gained even more. Our victory isn't just in the battles we fought, but in the courage we showed. We stood together, and together we won. The crowd cheered, but Lucas knew the road ahead would be long. Rebuilding Earth, restoring what had been lost, would take time. But the first step had already been taken, and they would take every step together. Raven moved quietly through the camp, blending with the shadows. He had done what he needed to do. The humans were stronger now, more united than ever before. But Raven had never been one to stay in the light. He had fought the Varnock, and he had won. But there were still scars to heal. There were still battles to fight. Raven didn't need glory. He didn't need thanks. He only needed one thing: the knowledge that the humans would survive, no matter what. Far from Earth, in the vast emptiness of space, General Craven sat in his command room, staring at the stars. He had underestimated the humans. The Varnock had been forced to retreat, but the defeat was far from permanent. The war wasn't over. Prepare the fleet, Craven ordered, his voice cold and calculating. We will return to Earth. The humans have only tasted victory, and they won't know what's coming next. But Craven's anger was tempered by something else, a sense of dread. Raven had proven himself more dangerous than the Varnock had ever imagined. And Craven had no doubt that if the humans were to survive the next attack, they would need more than just hope. They would need Raven. And Craven would stop at nothing to make sure he was crushed. Back on Earth, the survivors were already starting to rebuild. Lucas and Marla worked alongside them, gathering resources and organizing groups to restore the world. There was no time to waste. The war might have been won, but the future was still uncertain. Marla looked out at the horizon, her mind full of questions. Where do we go from here? she asked Lucas. "We've won, but we've lost so much." Lucas turned to her, his expression serious. "We rebuild. We unite. And when the Varna come again, we'll be ready. We'll be stronger." Marla nodded, her resolve hardening. "We won't let them take this world again." Raven had disappeared once more, leaving no trace behind. But his presence lingered, a silent guardian watching over the humans. The resistance had turned into something greater than a rebellion. It had become a force that would never be broken. As the days passed, the humans grew stronger. They were rebuilding their cities, their farms, and their lives. But there was still much to do. And Raven would be there, in the shadows, when they needed him. In the quiet of the night, Captain Lucas stood alone on a hill, looking out at the world he had fought to protect. The stars above were distant, cold, and unfeeling. But on Earth, there was warmth. There was hope. "Raven," Lucas whispered, knowing that the man, the ghost, was somewhere out there, watching. "Thank you." And even though Raven was far away, he heard the words. The world was still broken, still scared by the war. But the humans had something now that they had never had before. They had hope. They had strength. And above all, they had each other. Raven had shown them the way. And though he was gone for now, his legacy would live on in the hearts of every person who had fought alongside him. The battle had been won. But the war for the future was only just beginning. And with the strength of the humans united, there was no doubt they would survive whatever came next.